Well, hey, you're watching What Was That About? I'm so glad you've joined us for today's episode. My name is Moses Khan. I'm joined with the lead pastor of All People's Church, Tony Soldano. Pastor, how you doing?
I'm well. Well, it's a little bit cold in here.
It's a little chilly in here, but we have some sunshine outside.
But apparently it's spring.
It is spring.
Well, it isn't spring in the studio.
In Canada, you never know that it's spring.
Talk to somebody or...
Well, listen, we're excited that you have joined us for today's episode. And if you are a Christian watching this, you know, sometimes we go through life and go through, the day-to-day living out our faith, and we experience resistance. We experience what we might call and consider persecution, and sometimes even attacks on our faith. And I think sometimes we have the tendency, Pastor, to think, hey, this is just a result of our world becoming more anti-faith, more anti-God, more towards atheism. But I think the reality is that there's clearly something happening that's targeted toward Christianity, not just the concept and the reality of God or religion, but our world is becoming more and more anti-Christian. And, you know, we were talking and you made the statement about a war on Christianity. Is there a war on Christianity in our world? Do we see that? Is that a correct way to put it?
100%.
Yeah?
100%. And I believe that it's a spiritual issue.
Okay.
Because the spirit of Antichrist, although Antichrist himself isn't present yet, the spirit of Antichrist, which we know was released from the death of Christ,
right,
has been operating and is operating, but there just seems to be an intensity. Pastor Moses, when you consider that more Christians have been killed for their faith in the last 100 years than in 2,000 years combined.
Wow.
Like that's a startling statistic. And I do, I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm not trying to be dramatic. There is a war, whether it's persecution on a day-to-day basis, or whether it's outright murder, as we saw in Nashville, where this transgender individual goes in and shoots children, and teachers and adults, administrative workers there,
right,
and of course the media fails to tell you that. There are crimes of hate on Christianity in particular. Now, there are going to be some people to say, well, there have been crimes against Islam, etc. Yes,
sure.
No question about it, but certainly not with the repetition.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, though, that when these hate crimes happen to other faiths, man, governments and leaders, they just trip over themselves, apologizing, showing up at these events.
Yeah.
But when it has to do with Christians and Christianity, there seems to be another standard, and it's much, much lower.
Yeah, it's like, who cares if Christians die? We've been told by, especially in the West where we live, that Christianity seems to be the problem that doesn't allow the Western world to progress and move forward, and it holds us back with its archaic ideas. And yet, if you study history, it's Christianity that has allowed humanity and society to progress, whether it's education stuff, even in terms of scientific discoveries and all of that.
Arts.
Yeah. It's Christianity that has moved humanity forward and society forward. And so they never want to talk about that.
Yes.
And so it's like, yeah, who cares if Christians die? And the reality is they know that we're quiet people. We're not going to go do crazy things. And so when it comes to other religious groups like, people of the Muslim faith, well, yeah, governments are so quick to apologize because they know what the radical people on these sides of, the faith can do and what they're capable of. And so, of course, they're going to shrink back.
Right.
But you never hear an apology towards Christians.
And Pastor Moses, when we talk about radical people that follow Jesus, we're talking about people that are more in love with Jesus. They're more peaceful. They're more gentle. They're more loving.
Yeah.
Because anybody that commits atrocities, murder, violence against any people are not, repeat, they are not followers of Jesus.
That's right.
They may say they are,
That's right.
but they are not, because Christ never started a war He was never one that incited violence. And the only time, because people will point to the time that he came to the temple, his father's house. He wasn't in the marketplace. It was his father's house where he became violent and turned over tables.
Right.
And that was the only time. But even the words that he said to Peter when Peter tried to defend even the Lord from arrest, he said, put away your sword, because those that are going to live by the sword are going to die by the sword.
That's right.
But there is something very disturbing that is happening. We are quiet people. We are passive people. We are, peaceful people.
Yeah.
And so, as leaders and governments, in their own way, are marginalizing our faith. They're marginalizing the Bible. They're marginalizing our belief systems. Those that have an angst in their heart now feel liberated to, take advantage of these situations because no one's coming after them.
Yeah.
And this is truly a problem. It's almost like there's a self-hatred in the West. The West was birthed on Judeo-Christian values. That is historical truth, constitutional truths embedded in the foundations. But now, whether it's atheism or secularism and pantheism and all the rest of these things that are happening, it's like somebody, they didn't announce it per se, but it almost seems like it's open season on Christians and Christianity, and it seems to be getting worse. Seems to be getting worse.
And now we're seeing things on the news, from the most unlikely place that we thought we would receive pushback, and that is Israel. Right. And so there are people I think there's two gentlemen there in the government there who want to pass a law against, any Christian trying to convert somebody into a follower of Jesus in Israel, of all the likely places where Christianity was birthed.
Right.
And so that is wild because, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but Christians have always been the biggest supporters of Israel from the get-go. And so even a place like that has constantly received support from Christianity, there are seeds there that want to turn against it and want to paint Christianity as the bad thing in the world.
Well, what's interesting there, if we look at history, we look at the Bible, the biggest persecutors of Christians in the early church were Jewish people.
Right.
Then when, Christianity became, quote unquote, the state religion of the Roman Empire under Constantine, then the biggest persecutors of the Jewish people became Christians. I mean, whether it's Hitler and others, they'll tell you they were following Christian values, which again, I want to repeat, that's not Jesus.
That's right, yeah.
In the last, few years, 10, 15 years, there's been this remarkable allegiance, particularly between Pentecostal evangelical Christians, including us, we're very pro-Israel, and the Jewish people, a lot of support, a lot of money. Now, we want to point out these are two very ultra-Orthodox individuals in the government, but that there would be this sort of rhetoric in this nation. And I've been there in Old Jerusalem, Pastor Moses. You have Christians, Jews, Muslims that are all living together. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But it's normally, the conflict is normally between the Muslims and the Jewish people, not the Christians. Not the Christians. The Christians are there because of, obviously, the birthplace of Christ, and many people travel there for tourism. So this is shocking.
Right.
It's not the Christians that are causing violence and murders and sending rockets into Jerusalem and other parts of it's not the Christians that are doing that. So to hear this sort of thing is disturbing. And then some people would say, Pastor Moses, is criticism of Israel anti-Semitism? And it's not. If Israel makes mistakes, they should be criticized. Now, it can easily turn into anti-Semitism, but for someone like me, I love the Jewish people. I love Israel. The Bible, was written to Jewish people by Jewish authors. We worship, if you want to call it, a Jewish God, right? the Jewish God, the God of gods, although he's not Jewish or Christian. But I think we need to be critical without being anti-Semitic, and we're not.
Yeah.
But this is very disturbing, and we're calling it out. I know you were saying to me that President, I think he's Prime Minister Netanyahu, he made a statement
so
on
he
Twitter.
tweeted and he said, I want it to be known that I'm never going to pass a law that is against Christianity or that is against the Christian people. And so that brought some, I think, calmness and peace to the Christian community, because we're all trying to, we're like, what? Israel out of all the places,
Well, and Pastor Mo, your family's from Pakistan.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you were born there. I mean, I've heard the stories, but you talk about what it's like living in an environment where, you're under threat constantly.
Right. Yeah. No, somebody was just asking me, hey, have you ever gone back? I said, yeah, once. And they're like, oh, how come you don't go back very often? And it's like, man, I wish it was safer, because it's an incredible country, beautiful place, and, the landscapes there are incredible. But there is this constant hostility, and you just never know what could happen. And so you're constantly watching, over your shoulder. You're constantly wondering what the motives are of people. Like, even my dad and family members, who've been there multiple times, have experienced certain things. My dad had an instance where he was at a bank, and just after leaving, 20, 30 minutes later, the bank blew up.
Wow.
The church my family goes to, there was an individual who started coming every week, and then one day he was wearing a vest, and blew up, half of the church. Wow. And so there's all this stuff that happens there, and it's not, it's not the Jews and the Christians, it's the Muslim population there that are attacking Christianity. And so it's like those are the places you expect, resistance, pushback, and persecution. Not Israel. Right.
And Pastor Moses, not that here again, in Israel, they're not severely persecuted. This law, however, came, the idea is to imprison people for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's to imprison them, especially if they're a minor, then the consequences are severe.
And isn't it amazing? It brings me back to the early church where when the early followers of Jesus were arrested, and they were told, you can preach. Just don't preach in this name. Don't preach in the name. Yeah. That's the name that seems to fire everybody up, because it fires up the demonic realm.
That's right.
Let's be honest.
That's right.
And so what other name could we possibly preach in? That is our Lord, that is our Savior, that is our Messiah. He has commanded us to witness, to preach in His name. And yet in over 50 countries now, we have severe persecution of Christians. But it's not, whether it's not in the best interests of governments to protect people like us. We always thought that, okay, in North America, you're safe. Clearly, we're not.
Right.
We're seeing more and more persecution on a daily basis, whether it's ridicule, the Bible being labeled as hate literature. We know that there's incredible pushback from the whole homosexual community and what have you. And so, as you become marginalized, then it gives people, whether they have spiritual issue, mental health issues, they just now feel like, well, we have license.
Yeah,
we have license, and that's not to say that there aren't laws here, but. The truth is this. There's laws in the United States, but that's not going to help those people that are now dead. Children. You took children's lives for no reason other than your heart was full of hatred. And, this is what I've been preaching about in the last days. Who's the murderer, Pastor Moses, right? Who's the murderer? Who's the thief? Satan. Yeah. He's the one that is behind all this, and religious spirits in people can do some wicked things.
Yeah, so true. And I think just as we wrap up here, I think this is a reminder, that hey, Jesus is the way, He is the truth, He is the life, because there's such resistance against Him, and He is an incredible loving person who. Sacrificed His own life so that humanity would be saved. And it's like that's the individual that gets attacked the most. And so hopefully that opens, your eyes to see that Jesus is true. And that's why he faces such resistance. And that's why we as Christians face such resistance. But there is hope. He is coming back. And we will live triumphantly with him and in him. And so we look forward to that day. But thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Hey, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Please like the video, share it with a couple people. It really allows us to get, this video and this content to as many people as we possibly can. Pastor, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you. God bless you. We'll see you in the next episode.